Traveling to the U.S. under Donald Trump can carry a lot of emotional baggage.
Many Canadian vacationers apparently are avoiding the U.S.
Canadians are turning away from U.S. destinations.
Travel to the United States in the era of Donald Trump has baggage beyond the physical kind. It has hesitation, emotion, and for the majority, avoidance. More and more Canadian visitors are choosing quietly to skip us destinations altogether. At the same time, brand new world-class airports are opening everywhere in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. These glistening global gateways are drawing flights, business, and glory once exclusive to America. At the same time, U.S. airports once thriving gateways are turning into ghost towns. International traffic has fallen by as much as 70 to 80% in some places. Airlines are slashing routes, and even freight is flowing north to Canada. For generations, airports had been America's front doors to the world, symbols of hope, culture, and power. But those doors are now closing, and this is not just about empty terminals or fewer tourists. If these connections are cut, entire regions will lose trade, tourism, and foreign confidence. So which airports are deteriorating most rapidly? And what does it signal when even New York and Los Angeles, the crown jewels of America's global transport network, are losing their grip? Here and now, we name the top 10 U.S. airports in crisis. Number 10. Portland International Airport, Oregon. Portland International Airport, or PDX, was the height of progressive and open travel. It had all international visitors to love about the U.S. design, green thinking, and a city living off being different. They could indulge in craft beer, local food, and a gateway that married urban culture seamlessly with nature. But nowadays, PDX is a much different place. International traffic has fallen 73% since early 2023, and entire areas of the airport have been closed forever. That once thriving international wing where Pacific Northwest character and Portland's makers were once feted now echoes empty. Large carriers like Lufthansa, British Airways, and Scandinavian Airlines have pulled out their direct flights and switched to Vancouver. Portland's reputation as a hub of creativity and greenness, once appealing to European visitors and professionals, is now overshadowed by concerns for safety and chaos. International visitor inquiries fell 81%, as many openly attributed negative travel publicity. The ripple effects are catastrophic. International business travel has resulted in hotels with less than 40% occupancy rates. Restaurants that cater to global visitors are closing down. Even Portland's famous food truck culture has had international spending cut back by more than half. Cargo traffic also is shifting. Once a major trans-Pacific hub, Portland is losing business to Seattle and Vancouver. A once proud link to Asia and Europe is increasingly detached from foreign commerce. If even Portland, liberal, green, artsy Portland, can't keep international cachet, it says something not so great about the way America is being seen around the world. But if Portland's fall is unexpected, wait until you learn what is happening on the East Coast. Number 9. Newark Liberty International Airport, New Jersey. Hidden beneath Manhattan's towers, Newark Liberty International would be a natural gateway to America's greatest city. For decades, it was the smart choice for international visitors wishing to reach New York without JFK's madness. But today, Newark is in limbo, too close to ignore, but too problem-plagued to embrace. Passenger traffic at Newark since 2022 is down 68%. Airlines are routinely reducing service. Emirates, once a heavy hitter with multiple flights daily to Dubai, has reduced its schedule in half. European carriers like Virgin Atlantic and Swiss International have diverted their focus to JFK and Boston and abandoned Newark with few international links. The real issue is perception. New York remains what everyone wants, but not Newark. The airport has become infamous for delays, congestion, and poor passenger experiences. Online forums are filled with personal stories of long lines, lost luggage, and poor communication. For many overseas visitors, Newark is their first taste of America, and all too often, that initial taste is frustration. Security lines are 2 hours long, and processing through immigration, designed to be streamlined, is now tedious and unfriendly. Instead of a welcome to America, visitors experience confusion, frustration, and a sense of not belonging. And that is just the beginning. If Portland and Newark are already doing this so badly, the rest of the list will amaze you even more. The difference between Newark and competing airports such as Dubai, Singapore, or even close neighbor Toronto has become impossible to overlook. Travel agents now candidly recommend clients steer clear of Newark altogether. And yet, as Manhattan remains a draw for international interest, New Jersey is the one suffering the consequences. The state's economy relied heavily on foreign visitor spending at restaurants, hotels, and shopping malls in the vicinity of the airport. Business travelers who once stayed in Newark for convenience are now willing to pay extra and stay in Manhattan hotels just to avoid being exposed to Newark. But most jarring of all is what Newark represents as a first impression of America. For millions of tourists, Newark was their initial entry to the United States. Instead of excitement, that first step now creates disillusionment. Word of mouth previously required for repeat travel has turned considerably negative, and Newark is not unique. Across America, fantastic gateways are similarly beset with an identity crisis. But let's hold that thought before we proceed to number 8. Recall that this recession has nothing to do with summer vacations. Those airports represent the heartbeat of their local economies, and their collapse threatens a whole lot more than summer vacation. If you are interested in keeping up with the stories no one else is reporting, make sure to subscribe before we reveal the airports at the very top of the list, because what we have here has the potential to remake the future of America's economy. Number 8. Boston Logan International Airport, Massachusetts, zone of the nation's oldest and most dignified airports. Logan has been New England's gateway for decades. Waves of international visitors came here to visit Boston's world-class universities, revolutionary history, and cultural attractions. Harvard, Michigan Tea, the Freedom Trail, Fenway Park. These institutions made Boston a destination for students and scholars, visitors in search of the true American experience. But Logan is suffering a crisis of its own today. International traffic has fallen 59% since early 2023, with steep declines from key markets, including the United Kingdom, Germany, and Canada. The very seeds that sowed students and cultural tourists are drying up, as visitors increasingly choose destinations less burdened by barriers. Boston's greatest strength, its universities, has become a double-edged sword. Parents who once sent students to learn in America are now turning to Canada or Europe, frustrated with long delays in processing visas and restrictions on U.S. immigration. The irony hurts. Boston's global reputation for scholarship is being undermined by barriers that deter foreign students. Airlines have responded by decreasing the frequency. Aer Lingus reduced Boston-Fay-Dublin routes by 40%. Air France ended seasonal Paris service. Even Virgin Atlantic, once a reliable friend, has diverted capacity elsewhere. The result is fewer direct flights, higher connection prices, and a city that is increasingly cut off from the rest of the world. The ripple effect is felt far beyond the airport. Cambridge and Back Bay hotels that counted on visiting scholars now have occupancy levels under 50% at peak time. Restaurants that fed international families in the university districts are scaling back or closing down entirely. Retail establishments in Harvard Square and Copley Place record staggering declines in foreign spending. But as bad as Boston's fall sounds, it is worse just to its south, at an airport that has long been one of America's leading international gateways. Number 7. Miami International Airport, Florida. For decades, Miami International was the gateway between Latin America and the United States. Ideally situated, it was the obvious destination for travelers from Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and across the Caribbean. MIA wasn't just an airport. It was the throbbing heart of South Florida's global identity. But now MIA is in a profound crisis. International passenger traffic from Latin America fell by 64% since 2023, with the steepest declines from its biggest markets, Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. And this is not a short-term downturn, it reflects a deep shift in the mood of Latin American visitors toward the United States. One of the biggest problems, waiting around for visas. For many Latin countries, waiting for a U.S. visitor's visa has taken over 6 months. Compare that to Europe, where tourists can come in visa-free or with streamlined processes, and the choice is easy. Increasingly, Latin Americans are avoiding the U.S. for destinations that welcome them more warmly. For most families in Latin America, the option is no longer available. A family from São Paulo can go to Portugal, Spain, or Italy with minimal red tape and economical fares. Going to Miami, on the other hand, takes months to arrange, is marred by visa delays, and requires more paperwork. What was once just an annoyance is now really an obstacle. Pressures on the currency only add to the problem. As the American currency is growing stronger relative to the currencies of Latin America, Miami vacations are evolving from being common indulgence to opulence, maintained within a privileged elite's reach. At the same time, European destinations compete aggressively with Latin American tourists by offering better exchange rates, easier access, and equally rich experiences. Those cities of Lisbon, Madrid, and Rome now are attracting the same tourists who previously went to South Florida without a second thought. The financial blow to Miami has been hard. Hotels in high-end neighborhoods such as Bal Harbour and Aventura, which were once teeming with Brazilian and Argentine tourists, now average less than 40% occupancy. High-end shopping districts that formerly flourished with international consumers now survive on domestic travelers alone. Even the cruise business, another crown jewel of Miami, has experienced precipitous declines in Latin American passengers. Airlines are pushing back in ways that only serve to worsen the crisis. LATAM Airlines cut 30% of Miami flights. Avianca cut some weekly flights. Even American Airlines, which relies heavily on Miami as a hub, has reduced fleet size and cut routes. The more remote flights are from the destination, the longer and more expensive the trip, more discouraging visitors, and fueling a self-reinforcing cycle of decline. But Miami is not the only Sunday Belt city struggling with this issue. Another airport, surrounded by some of America's most long-lived natural icons, is losing its position in the global spotlight. Number 6. Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, Arizona. Phoenix was once a magnet for foreign visitors in search of the authentic American West. From the Grand Canyon to Sedona's Red Rocks, from desert resorts of luxury to Native American monuments, Arizona offered experiences that could be had nowhere else. Sky Harbor's smoothness even had it on the list of America's best-run airports. But now Sky Harbor is suffering. International air passenger traffic is down 62% from early 2023. Flights from overseas that once brought a steady stream of visitors from Germany, the United Kingdom, and Canada have been cut back or scrapped altogether. Why this drop is so perplexing is that Arizona's wonders didn't vanish. The Grand Canyon still draws millions, and the mild winters of the state still are an escape from winter. But international tourists must now pay more to reach this destination and encounter more complicated travel arrangements. As a reaction, they're finding alternative, easier solutions. New Zealand and Australia offer similar outdoor adventures with much less complicated entry procedures. Canada offers wilderness travel without visa needs. Even domestic destinations in Colorado and Utah are seeing travelers who otherwise would have visited Arizona. The damage doesn't end there. Phoenix has consciously worked to position itself as a world business hub, bringing in tech firms, manufacturers, and logistics firms that relied on international connectivity. It is harder now, with fewer international flights, to maintain those connections and attract new foreign investment. Airlines are also receding in kind. Lufthansa has suspended its seasonal Frankfurt flight. British Airways has cut its frequency of Phoenix-London flights by half. Even U.S. airlines have slashed connecting options, making it harder for foreign visitors to reach Arizona via other American hubs. The ripple effects are spreading across the region. Hotels and resorts all across Phoenix and Scottsdale are seeing dramatic drops in foreign reservations. High-end winter resorts that once hosted high-spending Europeans now are focusing on U.S. travelers. Golf resorts, spas, and cultural tourism are all suffering the same decline. Most frustrating is the larger image problem. Phoenix wasn't a destination to visit. It was the starting point from which to start exploring the American Southwest. From the Grand Canyon to Monument Valley, Utah, Nevada, and New Mexico, Sky Harbor once connected travelers to the epicenter of the frontier experience. Now that role is vanishing, placing the entire region in jeopardy. Phoenix's problems are bad, but they pale in comparison to the crisis at our next airport, one that was also once regarded as one of the crown jewels of American aviation. Number 5. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, Texas. For decades, DFW was the emblem of American ambition. Its size an American Airlines fortress hub, it was among the most networked airports in the world, linking people to destinations smaller hubs could barely even dream of reaching. For business travel or freight, Dallas-Fort Worth was the throbbing core of Texas's global player status. But now that picture is fading. Global passenger traffic fell 57% since 2023, with its steepest declines from Asia and Europe, the same markets that once made its global relevance. The airport that was proud to straddle the world is now struggling to remain relevant in a more competitive aviation world. The causes stretch beyond aviation itself. Texas's reputation as a pro-busyness state used to draw foreign companies, conventions, and trade shows to Dallas, ensuring a steady flow of customers. However, shifting geopolitics and fresh policy barriers have made these alliances more difficult. Middle Eastern and Latin American business travelers are now subjected to greater scrutiny and longer delays, discouraging them from setting up shop in Dallas. Tech conferences that used to attract thousands of foreign visitors are shifting to Canada or Europe. Even established alliances are beginning to unravel due to administrative pressure and political tensions. Airlines are pulling back in turn. Singapore Airlines has reduced. Emirates has diverted its flights from the Middle East through other American airports. Korean Air has dropped its seasonal route to Seoul altogether. For a state with deep trade ties to Asia, this loss of connectivity hurts bitterly. Business travelers who once flew non-stop through Dallas now fly on Vancouver or Seattle routes, or even European hubs. The ripple effects are felt throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Airport hotels, which once prospered on international executives and airline staff, today have under 50% occupancy. Corporate housing companies, once busy with long-term foreign assignees, are seeing demand dry up. Restaurants and entertainment venues once serving global tastes are redirecting to a domestic clientele. Even DFW's cargo lifeline is deteriorating. It was once a major hub for freight moving between Asia and Latin America, but unreliability and delay have driven logistics titans to relocate operations elsewhere. FedEx and UPS both scaled back international sorting operations, favoring more efficient hubs, and the consequences extend far beyond Dallas. When overseas visitors can't arrive at DFW in a timely fashion, they're less likely to visit Texas cities like Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, or even Houston. The collapse of Texas's most important overseas gateway damages the region's overall economy and tourism apparatus. But more bad than Dallas's situation has worsened is what is unfolding on the West Coast, where the entire region's global artery hangs in the balance. Number 4. Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, Washington. Seattle's airport wasn't merely a transportation hub, it was a symbol, the gateway to a region renowned for innovation, ecological responsibility, and global trade, and the nerve center for Boeing. Sea symbolized America's connection to the Pacific Rim. Its sleek facilities and strategic location made it the geographic link between the West Coast and Asia and Europe. But now, Seattle faces a crisis that is unprecedented in its history. Passenger traffic from Asia has dropped 69% since the early months of 2023. European arrivals have declined by 54%. The airport that was once teeming with international vitality now stumbles along with a fraction of its former capacity. The worst possible timing, Seattle's global reputation stems from its identity as a crossroads of commerce and innovation. Colossal tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, and Boeing once attracted surges of foreign convention attendees, business visitors, and investors. People from all around the globe came to learn about the Pacific Northwest's combination of natural beauty and cutting-edge culture. Seattle was the door to opportunity, but conditions are changed. Technologies for working remotely have reduced the necessity for international business travel. Geopolitical tensions have strained relations with Asia. Trade tensions, realignments, and policy shifts have upset the frictionless flow of people who previously considered Seattle the gateway to America's future. Even Boeing's current production debacle has added to Seattle's suffering, cutting vital business connections that previously funneled international customers, vendors, and industry partners through sea with regular frequency. The same system that propelled Seattle's international volume is now running on fumes. Airlines have started to pull back. All Nippon Airways scrapped altogether its Seattle-Tokyo route. Icelandair pulled its seasonal route. Even veterans like British Airways scaled back flights from London to Seattle. Every severed connection means extra time, higher cost, and annoying inconvenience for international passengers who used to use sea as their non-stop entry point. The ripple effects are huge. Downtown Seattle hotels, once chock full of foreign business executives and tourists, now see their occupancy rates fall below 45%. Timeless attractions like Pike Place Market and the Space Needle get far fewer international visitors. Even the Pacific Northwest's famous outdoor recreation areas, from Washington mountains to Oregon coastlines, are suffering, since international visitors simply can't get to the region so easily anymore. And that is not all. Sea's compromised connectivity has disrupted travel and business across the entire Pacific Northwest. Cities like Portland, Spokane, and Anchorage that were dependent on Seattle for access to the world are being further isolated. When Seattle's gateway falters, the entire region from Washington and Oregon to Idaho and Alaska finds itself without global visibility. But as bad as Seattle's collapse has been, it pales in comparison to the crisis which lies ahead for us at our next stop. Here, an airport built as a monument to American pride and the face of American diplomacy itself is now witnessing its worldwide clout crumble. Designed by the legendary Eero Saarinen in honor of America's strength and advancement, Dulles was not just meant to move passengers, it was meant to bring the world to America's capital. And for decades, it did. Diplomats and foreign ministers, business executives and cultural icons walked its halls, and Dulles became a platform for America's global relations. But now the airport is faced with a crisis that reaches to the very heart of US leadership. International passenger traffic has been plummeting by a staggering 65% since 2023, with particularly sharp drops from longtime allies. The once thriving hub of diplomacy and cultural exchange now lifts smaller numbers of planes, fewer tourists, and a lower international profile. And the symbolism cannot be ignored. If less foreign tourists are coming to Washington, D.C., the capital of the free world, it is reason for alarming questions about how the rest of the world views America's leadership. It is not just a matter of tourist stats. Washington's economy depends on international conventions, diplomatic meetings, and global corporate conferences. Every canceled direct flight makes it harder and more expensive for those key visitors to reach the city, undermining anything from trade negotiations to cultural exchanges. That is, when Dulles fails, America's influence abroad does too. Airlines have been cutting deeply. Virgin Atlantic reduced its London-Fay-DC schedule. Paris service was cut by Air France. Even Lufthansa, longtime friend, has shifted much of its European capacity to other East Coast gateways. The result? Diplomats, executives, and cultural ambassadors are having to connect in other cities, saving time, hassle, and uncertainty out of journeys once effortless. The ripple effect on the Washington metropolitan area has been devastating. Tyson's Corner, Arlington, and downtown D.C. hotels that once housed foreign delegations now have empty rooms. Restaurants that once had a diverse international clientele now serve menus that revolve around catering to predominantly domestic tourists. Even upscale retailers in Georgetown are seeing huge drops in international retail sales. Perhaps most distressing of all, Washington's status as a real global city hangs in the balance. Institutions like the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, and the National Gallery once thrived on foreign visitors. These cultural exchanges created bridges of understanding that underpinned America's diplomatic and commercial ties. These soft power levers of influence are vanishing now. With overseas visitors fewer in number, cargo service at Dulles is also in trouble. Once the go-to airport for sensitive cargo, diplomatic pouches, government files, and high-dollar business product, the airport now experiences delays and security bottlenecks. Many governments and companies have redirected their logistics through other airports, or in some cases, even other countries. The reliability that made Dulles so important has been eroded. But as bad as this is, what is happening in Washington is dwarfed by an even larger failure. Our next airport isn't just losing travelers, it is watching an entire city's world rep. The airport's legendary theme building, its Space Jam-age, Spider Jam-like shape, was once the symbol of American optimism and ingenuity. For decades, it welcomed millions of international travelers who arrived in pursuit of the dream of Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and Southern California living. But today, Los Angeles International Airport laxes in the midst of a crisis that threatens not only America's Pacific Gateway status, but also Los Angeles's status as world entertainment capital. Since the start of Lianchen, passenger volumes have dropped by an astounding 500%, with losses in Asia being the largest, the same markets that drove Trans-Pacific travel in previous years. The airport that symbolized American aspirations is now considered by many to be an over-Jan complex, over-Jan-priced and unkind gateway. And the kicker, Hollywood, the city's biggest export to the globe, isn't what it used to be. Streaming media has put American entertainment on tap anywhere in the world, and burgeoning content production hubs in South Korea, India, and Canada are reshaping cultural influence. The majority of international tourists who once traveled to Los Angeles to witness Hollywood firsthand no longer think it is worth it. The American dream streams into their living room. Meanwhile, rising costs and shifting policies have urged entertainment companies to film offshore, where the incentives are better and the regulations fewer. The gravitational pull that once drew millions of foreign travelers to Los Angeles has considerably weakened. Airlines have rapidly contracted. Singapore Airlines cut Los Angeles capacity by nearly 60%. Cathay Pacific dropped multiple Hong Kong flights. Even established performers like British Airways and Air France reduced capacity on routes once among the most profitable in their networks. The result: passengers must route through other hubs, making LA less convenient and much more expensive to reach. The fallout is shaking Southern California's tourism economy to its core. Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood hotels now have occupancy rates dropping below Baffinger-Fisher, with overseas bookings collapsing. Theme parks, formerly teeming with Asian and European visitors, are quietly retooling their entertainment schedules to cater to almost entirely domestic clienteles. Even Rodeo Drive, long a symbol of international luxury consumer spending, experiences steep declines in overseas shopping activity. But the greatest loss is not economic, it is cultural. Los Angeles was not a location, it was the center of American soft power, a city that sold style, values, and aspirations to the world. Every international visitor who walked along Sunset Boulevard, took a studio tour, or attended a red Zan carpet premiere took pieces of American culture with them when they left. With fewer foreigners coming here, those cultural touchstones are disappearing, and with them, America's power to shape world thinking through entertainment and lifestyle. Even LAX's freight side is hurting. Once the heart of Yaddo imports as Yaddo exports as electronics, fashion, food, and more, airport is now plagued by reliability problems, security delays, and long wait times. Shipping powerhouses have redirected through other West Coast ports or even Canadian hubs, bypassing LA entirely. The impacts resonate far beyond tourism. Silicon Valley and Los Angeles tech giants bemoan increasing inability to draw foreign talent when foreign flights are reduced, and premier universities like UCLA, USC, and Caltech are increasingly struggling to recruit the best foreign students and professors who have a harder and more expensive time reaching Southern California. The city that once set world culture is losing its global ambitions, and its airport, once a logo of American globalism, is struggling to keep Los Angeles connected to the globe. But if you believed LAX was in trouble, wait until you hear about what is happening at our final airport. Number 1 on this list. It is not just a downturn. It is a collapse so contagious that America's top entryway to the world is now at risk of losing its very identity. The worldwide linkages that previously fueled California's machine for innovation already are creaking with constricted air connections. But jarring as LAX's slide into oblivion is, it is nothing at all compared with what is happening with our number 1 airport, the gem of us aviation, now teetering on the edge of a disastrous collapse. Number 1. John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York. So named after a president who personified hope and global leadership, JFK was not just a generic airport, but America's best global gateway. It welcomed world leaders, global business leaders, and scores of tourists seeking the quintessential American experience in the city that never sleeps. For decades, JFK symbolized America's presence at the very center of the global stage. But today, JFK is faced with a crisis unmatched in its history, a meltdown that attacks the very bedrock of America's world leadership. Global passenger travel since the early days of 2023 has fallen by an all-time record 78%. The biggest decline of any major airport in U.S. airline history. Entire review areas of international terminals stand silently now, mostly. Immigration desks remain unattended. Customs passageways echo with but few individual footsteps. The airport, once filled with the thrum of global connectivity, has now become an empty shell of its former self. And this is not just economic competition or short-term disruption. No, this is a shifting in the world's view of America, and New York City in particular. For decades, visiting New York has been considered necessary to understand American business, culture, and reach. Now, more and more foreign visitors stay away from it altogether in favor of places more affordable, accessible, and simply inviting. The ripple effects on New York's commercial economy are devastating. The city's status as a world financial capital rested on smooth access overseas, but with connections in disrepair, foreign banks, firms, and investors make it harder and more expensive to maintain operations here. Each canceled flight doesn't just harm tourism, it threatens New York's status as the financial capital of the world. The airlines have not been reluctant either. Emirates reduced JFK's service by 60%. British Airways dropped multiple daily flights to London. Even well-performing carriers like Virgin Atlantic and Air France consolidated routes, cutting frequencies that had made international aviation's golden age so familiar. The result? Business travelers and tourists alike have to route through other hubs, making New York less convenient, less competitive, and less integrated. Cargo has not been spared either. JFK once transported value, added cargo, fancy fashion, imports, bank documents, even secret diplomatic reports. Today, plagued by congestion and security bottlenecks, shipping giants FedEx and DHL are downsizing, diverting elsewhere to more productive hubs. And here we're left with a chastening question. If JFK, the airport that symbolized American ambition, global reach, and cultural dominance, can fall this far, what does that say about the country as a whole? How close are we to the precipice? And what happens when America's gateways to the world no longer face outward, but begin to shut? If this video awakened you, don't just stop here. Subscribe immediately, because what is happening at America's airports isn't only a travel crisis, it is a turning point for a generation, and the story continues.